I accidentally matched with a famous author on a dating app. He didn't tell me who he was until I criticized his best-selling book to his face. His dating profile just said James 34, writer. The photo showed a guy with glasses and a nice smile paired to nothing that screamed, I've sold 20 million books worldwide. His bio mentioned loving coffee shops, hiking trails, and obscure documentaries. 10 or normal, we matched on a Sunday. By Wednesday, we were texting constantly. By Friday, we had plans for dinner at a small Italian place in my neighborhood, parents the kind with checkered tablecloths and wine and carafes. He was cooter in person with this nervous energy that was oddly charming. When I asked what kind of writing he did, he just said fiction mostly, still trying to make it work. I told him about my job teaching 9th grade English and he seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about my students and curriculum. The conversation flowed easily until he asked what I was currently reading. Oh, I just finished this book everyone's obsessed with, I said, pulling it from my bag. I always carry my current read. I'm actually hate reading this one. I'll never forget how his eyes widened slightly when I placed The Midnight Purper on the table between us, the international bestseller that had been on the New York Times list for 58 weeks. The book my students wouldn't stop talking about, the book with James Morrow printed across the cover, the same James sitting across from me, but I didn't make the connection. The author photo on the back showed a serious-looking man with a full beard and professionally styled hair. My date was clean-shaven with messy curls. You are not enjoying it? He asked carefully. It's not terrible, I said with a laugh. The plot is gripping, I'll give him that. But the main character so unrealistic. No woman actually thinks that way about relationships. It's obvious the man wrote it. James took a long sip of wine, and don't get me started on the dialogue, I continued, warming to my subject. People don't make these grand speeches in real life. They stumble and interrupt each other and say the wrong thing. He nodded slowly. That's a fair criticism, sorry, I said suddenly embarrassed. I get passionate about books. What are you reading lately? He mentioned something I hadn't heard of, and we moved on. The rest of the date was lovely. He walked me home, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I'd like to meet again Sunday for a hike. It wasn't until I was brushing my teeth that night that it hit me. James writer. The careful reaction when I criticized the book. I ran to my living room, grabbed The Midnight Purper, and finally looked at the full author bio. James Morrow lives in Colorado with his dog Pike. My James had mentioned a golden retriever named Pike. I immediately texted him. Please tell me you are not that James Morrow. 3 dots appeared immediately. Would it be a problem if I was? I called him mortified. Why didn't you say anything when I was trashing your book to your face? He laughed. Because you were being honest. Do you know how rare that is in my life now? Essendon either gushes with praise or wants something from me. But I said your female characters were unrealistic. They probably are, he said. My editor's been telling me that for years. We talked until 2 a.m. He explained that he used outdated photos for his author bio deliberately and avoided mentioning his success on dates because previous relationships had changed once money and recognition entered the picture. He'd been on 3 dates that month with women who clearly recognized him and spent the evening praising everything he'd ever written. You called my dialogue unrealistic and still agreed to a second date, he said. That's the most refreshing thing that's happened to me since this book took off. We've been together 8 months now. I've read all his books. Some are genuinely brilliant, others I still have feedback about. He lets me read early drafts now, and his editor recently thanked me for my input on his female characters. Last week he handed me his newest manuscript. The main character is a passionate 9th grade English teacher who tells brutal truths and carries books everywhere she goes. Some things you just can't make up.